nobody wanted to say it out loud. Not the draft analysts, not the television panels, not the people who spent months explaining why Shedeur Sanders supposedly wasn't a real franchise quarterback prospect. Because admitting it now would force a lot of people to confront something uncomfortable. The NFL may have completely misread this situation from the beginning. And suddenly, the Cleveland Browns don't look like a rebuilding team anymore. They look dangerous. What makes this story so fascinating isn't just the possibility that Cleveland found a quarterback far later than anyone expected. It's how quickly the entire energy around the franchise has changed. A year ago, the Browns looked stuck. Now, there's real belief building around the building. And the people inside Cleveland are starting to sound like they know something the rest of the league still hasn't fully realized yet. And honestly, this is where the emotional side of the entire Shedeur Sanders story really began. Because once Shedeur Sanders started sliding down draft boards, the conversation around him changed completely. At first, people treated it like normal draft uncertainty. Different evaluations, different systems, different opinions about upside. That happens every year with quarterbacks. But then the slide kept going. Round 1 passed, then round 2, then round 3. And suddenly fans weren't just talking about football anymore. They were talking about narratives. Now, to be fair, every NFL team has its own grading process. Quarterback evaluation is incredibly complicated. Arm talent matters. Processing matters. Leadership matters. Fit matters. And sometimes players simply fall because teams prioritize other needs or prefer different styles of quarterback. That part is real. But what made Shedeur's situation feel different was how emotional the discussion around him became. Because critics weren't only questioning the player. They were questioning the personality, the confidence, the spotlight surrounding the Sanders name. And once those conversations started dominating coverage, many fans felt the football analysis itself became secondary. Now here, where things got especially interesting. Even while analysts kept pushing him down draft projections, betting markets and league speculation reportedly still showed strong interest around his future potential. That caught people's attention. Because whether fans like gambling culture or not, betting movement often reflects where informed confidence exists behind the scenes. And some people started wondering if the public conversation around Shedeur looked very different from the private opinions inside actual football circles. Now again, that doesn't mean every team secretly viewed him as a guaranteed superstar. That would be an exaggeration. But it did create a growing feeling that the gap between media narratives and football evaluation might have become unusually wide. And then the Cleveland Browns made the move. 5th round. One of the most talked about quarterback prospects in the country, suddenly landing in Cleveland far later than many expected. At the time, reactions were mixed. Some people called it a steal. Others treated it like a publicity pick. But now, looking back, many Browns fans believe that moment may eventually be remembered very differently. Not just as a late-round selection, but as the beginning of a complete franchise shift. And that's what makes this story so compelling now. Because once the draft was over, Cleveland didn't behave like a team taking a random gamble on a backup quarterback. Their actions afterwards suggested something much bigger was already forming behind the scenes, which leads directly into the next section. Because Andrew Berry's offseason decisions may have revealed what the Browns actually believed about Shedeur long before the rest of the league caught on. And this is where a lot of Browns fans believe the organization quietly revealed its real plan. Because after the draft ended, Andrew Berry didn't act like a general manager who had just taken a random fifth-round quarterback flyer. He acted like someone building towards something. Now, to be fair, Cleveland had major problems to fix regardless of who played quarterback. The offense struggled with consistency. Protection issues showed up repeatedly. The unit often looked disconnected rhythmically. That part wasn't controversial. Anyone watching the team last season could see it. But according to many fans and analysts, Berry's offseason decisions seemed unusually focused in one direction afterward. More offensive support, more flexibility, more speed, more infrastructure around the quarterback position overall. And that's why people started paying attention. Because front offices usually reveal what they truly believe through actions, not press conferences. Now think about what Berry reportedly saw last season. Not perfect performances, not dominant stat lines, flashes, moments where the offense suddenly looked more alive with Shedeur Sanders on the field. Better rhythm, faster decisions, more energy moving through the offense. Again, that doesn't mean Cleveland had already crowned him the future franchise quarterback internally. That would be speculation. But many fans believe Berry saw enough to realize something important. The environment around the quarterback needed to change completely. And instead of making small adjustments, the Browns attacked the offseason aggressively. Now here's the key detail. The moves themselves matter less than the overall direction. Because when a general manager upgrades multiple parts of an offense at once, it usually signals a broader vision. A belief that the system itself can become functional quickly if the right structure exists around it. And that's exactly why the excitement around Cleveland started growing. Now bring this back to Shedeur specifically. One of the biggest criticisms surrounding him entering the NFL involved pressure, holding onto the ball too long, operating behind chaos, trying to create too much when protection broke down. So if Berry truly believed there was real upside there, improving the infrastructure around him becomes the logical next step. Better protection, cleaner reads, more explosive skill players, an offense designed to help the quarterback operate instead of survive. That changes everything for young quarterbacks. Now here's what makes this story even more fascinating. The Browns didn't publicly announce some dramatic organizational reset. There wasn't one giant headline. But piece by piece, move by move, many fans began feeling like Cleveland was quietly reshaping itself around a younger offensive identity. And once people noticed that pattern, the entire conversation around the franchise started changing. Because suddenly, this didn't look like a desperate team anymore. It looked like a team building towards something very specific, which leads directly into the next section. Because what Shedeur walked into originally may have been one of the hardest situations any young quarterback could realistically succeed in. And honestly, this is the part of the story that changes how many fans now look back at Shedeur Sanders' early struggles. Because when people discuss young quarterbacks, they usually focus on the player first. The mechanics, the arm strength, the decision-making. But environment matters just as much, sometimes more. And according to many Browns fans, the environment Shedeur stepped into originally was almost designed to slow development down instead of accelerate it. Now, to be fair, Cleveland wasn't intentionally sabotaging anyone. NFL organizations are trying to win games every week. But the offense clearly lacked identity. One week it looked conservative. The next week it looked rushed. The rhythm never fully settled. And for a young quarterback trying to learn NFL timing and confidence, instability becomes incredibly difficult to overcome. Now think about what rookie quarterbacks usually need to succeed. Clear structure, reliable protection, defined reads, a coaching staff fully committed to development. That stability matters because quarterback confidence is built through repetition and trust. But last season often felt chaotic around the Cleveland Browns offense. Drives stalled constantly. Protection broke down at bad moments. The unit struggled to establish consistent momentum. And because the offense never looked fully comfortable overall, every quarterback conversation became emotionally charged very quickly. Now here's what makes Shedeur's flashes stand out more in hindsight. Even inside all that dysfunction, there were still moments where the offense suddenly looked alive. Not perfect, not dominant, but different. Faster tempo, cleaner rhythm, more visible confidence operating through the system. Those moments caught people's attention, especially inside the organization. Because front offices don't only evaluate production, they evaluate circumstances. And many fans now believe Cleveland's leadership recognized that Shedeur was showing positive traits despite operating in a difficult environment. Again, that doesn't automatically mean he had already proven himself as the long-term answer. That would be overstating things. But it does explain why the off-season strategy afterwards started making more sense to people. Now here's the important detail. A lot of quarterbacks fail because they never get the environment corrected early enough. The league moves quickly. Patience disappears. Narratives form fast. And once organizations lose confidence, young quarterbacks often never recover fully. That's why this current moment around Cleveland feels so significant emotionally. Because many Browns fans believe the franchise finally recognized the problem wasn't only the quarterback. It was the ecosystem around him. And once that realization happened, the organization started changing the ecosystem itself. Now bring this into the bigger picture. Because if the Browns truly fixed enough around the offense, then the next phase of this story becomes very uncomfortable for people who defended the old system, which leads directly into the next section. Because the contrast between the Kevin Stefanski era and what's happening under Todd Monken is starting to feel impossible for fans to ignore. And this is where the conversation starts getting genuinely uncomfortable for people who defended the old offensive structure in Cleveland. Because once Todd Monken arrived, the energy around the offense reportedly changed almost immediately. Not just the playbook, the atmosphere. Now, to be fair, coaching transitions always create excitement early. New terminology, new concepts, new optimism inside the building. That happens all across the NFL. But Browns fans believe this situation feels deeper than a normal honeymoon phase. Because for the first time in a while, the offense reportedly looks designed around rhythm instead of survival. That's a massive difference for a quarterback. Now think about the criticism surrounding Cleveland's offense before. Too slow at times. Too predictable. Drives stalling before they ever developed momentum. And perhaps most importantly, many fans felt the quarterback never looked fully comfortable operating inside the system consistently. That frustration followed the offense all season. Now here, where the comparison becomes difficult to ignore. Because according to camp discussions and reactions around the team, Monken's approach appears far more committed to tailoring the offense around what the quarterback does naturally well. Quicker reads, better spacing, more rhythm throws, cleaner timing concepts. And if that's true, it changes everything for Shedeur Sanders specifically. Because one of his strongest traits has always been composure and processing when the offense around him feels organized. Now again, It's important not to overreact to camp energy. No coordinator becomes a genius in June, and no offense becomes elite before real games begin. That distinction matters, but confidence inside a system matters enormously for quarterbacks. When coaches fully believe in a player, the play calling changes. The reps change. The communication changes. Players feel it. And many fans believe that's exactly what's happening in Cleveland right now. Now here's the emotional part of this story. A lot of Browns fans are starting to wonder whether the talent was always there, but the offensive environment simply never matched it properly before. That's the uncomfortable conversation developing online. Because if Monken immediately unlocks more consistency from the offense, people naturally start questioning why it took so long to build the system this way in the first place. And that's where the comparisons to the previous era become unavoidable. Not necessarily personal, just results-based. Now here's the key detail. The biggest difference fans keep mentioning isn't even statistics yet. It's clarity. The offense reportedly looks like it understands what it wants to be. That matters more than people realize. Because confused offenses play slow. Confident offenses attack. And right now, many people inside and outside Cleveland are starting to feel like this offense finally has direction. Which leads directly into the next section. Because the people watching practice every single day are starting to sound increasingly convinced that something very real is developing around Shedeur Sanders. And honestly, this may be the biggest reason the conversation around Shedeur Sanders feels different now compared to earlier in his career. Because the excitement no longer sounds like fan hype alone. It's starting to sound like belief inside the building. Now, to be fair, every training camp produces optimistic quotes. Players praise teammates. Coaches talk about growth. Organizations naturally try to build confidence publicly. That's normal NFL culture. But according to reports and reactions coming out of Cleveland, the tone surrounding the offense feels unusually energized right now. Not forced, not cautious, excited. And that distinction matters. Because people who watch quarterbacks every single day usually notice certain things long before fans do. Timing, command of the huddle, confidence before the snap, how teammates respond when a quarterback speaks. Those details reveal more internally than one highlight throw ever could. Now think about what several people around the Browns reportedly keep emphasizing. The offense has rhythm now. The energy feels faster. The quarterback appears more comfortable operating within the system. Again, none of that guarantees future success. Training camp praise alone means very little once real games begin. But emotionally, those reports still change perception. Especially for a franchise that spent so much time searching for offensive consistency. Now here, where things become fascinating. Some of the excitement surrounding Shedeur isn't even centered around flashy plays. It's centered around calmness, poise, the sense that the game slows down for him when the structure around him finally makes sense. That's one of the hardest traits to teach quarterbacks. And many Browns fans believe that's what coaches are reacting to right now. Now add in the increased reps reportedly being given to him inside the system. That's a major detail. Because young quarterbacks rarely develop fully without repetition. Real repetition, not occasional opportunities buried inside chaotic offensive environments. Quarterbacks improve through rhythm, trust, and accumulated experience operating the same concepts over and over again. And many fans feel like this is the first time Cleveland has truly committed to creating that developmental environment around Shedeur. Now here's the important part. The people reacting most strongly right now aren't only fans online. It's teammates, coaches, local observers watching practice closely. And once confidence starts spreading internally inside an NFL building, momentum can grow very quickly. That's what makes this situation feel potentially dangerous for the rest of the league. Because if the confidence inside Cleveland is real, then the version of Shedeur people saw during earlier struggles may not even resemble the version that eventually takes the field this season. Which leads directly into the next section. Because if Cleveland actually starts winning games early, the national media reaction could become one of the most fascinating parts of this entire story. And honestly, this may become one of the most entertaining parts of the entire season. Because if the Cleveland Browns actually start winning games early behind Shedeur Sanders, the national conversation around him could shift in very strange ways. Not immediately, not cleanly, and definitely not all at once. Now, to be fair, the NFL media landscape moves fast. Analysts constantly adjust opinions based on results. That's part of sports coverage. But fans already believe Shedeur has been discussed differently than many other young quarterbacks from the beginning. More personality-focused, more narrative-driven, more emotional overall. And because of that, many supporters think even successful performances would still come with skepticism attached. Now think about the type of conversations that could happen if Cleveland opens the season strong. People might say the defense is carrying the team, or the schedule was favorable, or the coaching system deserves more credit than the quarterback. Those are normal sports debates. Every young quarterback faces some version of them. But Browns fans believe the scrutiny around Shedeur would probably feel amplified because of the spotlight surrounding the Sanders family overall. Again, that's perception, not confirmed reality. But perception shapes how audiences react. Now here, where this becomes especially fascinating. If Cleveland starts winning consistently, some of the same analysts who questioned Shedeur heavily during the draft process may suddenly need to reevaluate those earlier takes publicly. And that's always uncomfortable in sports media. Because strong opinions create clips. Predictions live forever online. And once viewers start replaying old draft reactions beside real NFL success, the narrative shifts quickly from "Can he play?" to "How did so many people miss this?" That's when the conversation becomes emotional again. Now here's the important detail. Winning changes everything in the NFL. Not social media hype. Not practice clips. Not off-season optimism. Winning, that's what rewrites reputations. And if Shedeur starts producing victories consistently inside this new offensive structure, the league-wide perception around both him and Cleveland could change extremely fast. Now again, none of this is guaranteed. The Browns still have major questions to answer. Young quarterbacks still face rough stretches. Defenses adjust quickly. And hype can disappear overnight once adversity arrives. That reality matters. But emotionally, many fans already feel like the groundwork for something significant is being built right now in Cleveland. And if the wins start matching the growing confidence inside the building, the media conversation surrounding this team could become impossible to ignore. Which leads directly into the final section. Because after years of being treated like one of the NFL's biggest punchlines, the Browns may finally be entering a completely different era. For years, the Cleveland Browns were treated like one of the NFL's easiest punchlines. Too unstable, too inconsistent, too chaotic to fully trust. And honestly, after everything this franchise went through over the years, it wasn't hard to understand why people felt that way. But something about this current situation feels different. Not guaranteed. Not perfect. Different. Because this story no longer feels centered only around hype or off-season optimism. It feels centered around alignment. A front office that appears committed to a vision. A coaching staff building an offense with clarity. A roster getting younger, faster, and more connected around the quarterback position. And at the center of all of it sits Shedeur Sanders, one of the most debated young quarterbacks the league has seen in years. Now, to be fair, none of this guarantees superstardom. That's important to say clearly. Young quarterbacks struggle all the time. Development is unpredictable. And the NFL has destroyed plenty of off-season storylines before September even ended. That reality still exists. But at the same time, many Browns fans believe something important already happened. The organization finally chose a direction. And once franchises stop operating with hesitation, momentum can build incredibly fast. Now think about how quickly the perception around Cleveland has already started changing. A year ago, conversations centered around dysfunction. Now the discussion is about upside, potential, energy inside the building. That emotional shift matters more than people realize. Because confidence spreads throughout organizations. Players feel it. Coaches feel it. Fans definitely feel it. Now here's the fascinating part of this story. If Cleveland truly found the right offensive structure, if Todd Monken really unlocked a better version of the offense, and if Shedeur develops the way many people inside the organization seem to believe he can, then the Browns may have accidentally stumbled into one of the biggest quarterback steals in recent NFL memory. Again, that's still projection, not proven reality. But the possibility alone explains why excitement around this team keeps growing. Now here's the final thing to remember. The NFL doesn't care where you were drafted once games begin. It doesn't care about old narratives. It doesn't care about pre-draft opinions or television debates. Eventually, the league reduces everything down to one thing. Can you win? And if Cleveland starts answering that question consistently this season, then the rest of the football world may have to completely rethink what they thought they knew about both the Browns and Shedeur Sanders.